A history-making day, not only for television, but for the National Football League.
It's obvious to me right now that the Jets just don't understand what the draft's all about.
New York Giants, first-round selection, Lawrence Taylor.
Charlie Casserly, if you're listening, I will sign as the 9th quarterback.
The phone has finally rung for running back Thurman Thomas. I'm surprised we've all been talking about no quarterback, no Boomer Esiason. Whither the Boomer.
I thought Detroit was going to take me. I would have asked for so much money that I had to put me on layaway.
The more you think you know, the less you realize you know. 15 years of the NFL Draft here on ESPN. Boy, time flies when you're having fun. Lots of changes over the past decade and a half, from Billy Sims to Drew Bledsoe. The time has changed, the length has changed, but one thing hasn't changed. We're here, we're there, we're everywhere.
I'm Chris Mortensen with the Indianapolis Colts. They have the 2nd and 7th picks in the first round. They have a new draft boss in Bill Tobin, and I think they're going to have a new running back in Marshall Faulk.
Hi, I'm Tom Jackson here in New England with the Patriots. Bill Parcells in the catbird seat with the 4th choice overall in the first round. Right now, his phone is ringing off the hook. There could be a trade before the draft begins.
I'm Brad Nessler in Tampa, where for the 2nd straight year, the Bucs have the number 6 spot. If they don't trade down, look for them again to go to defense, and this time in the secondary, possibly Aaron Glenn of Texas A&M or Antonio Langham of Alabama.
I'm Gary Danielson with the Arizona Cardinals, and the story here is Buddy Ryan is in charge. He's already brought in 2 of his guys, Clyde Simmons and Seth Joyner, and today he's going to be choosing defense.
I'm Mark Malone with the Philadelphia Eagles. For the 2nd year in a row, the Birds have been hit hard by free agency, but they have 2 first-round picks in which to rebuild. A lot of holes to fill, but defense the priority.
This is Fred Edelstein. For the 2nd consecutive year, the 49ers lost to the Cowboys in the NFC Championship game because they couldn't stop Troy Aikman in the Dallas offense. The 49ers' mission, rebuild their defense, and today they have 2 first-round picks to do it with.
I'm Andrea Kramer at the Vikings complex, where Minnesota has 2 first-round picks for the first time in 20 years. And yes, another War Room cam will take you inside where the decisions are being made.
This is Chris Myers with the Cowboys. Jerry Jones operating his first draft without Jimmy Johnson. Dallas wants to trade up to draft a pass rusher. We'll show it to you on War Room Cam.
Hi, I'm Ron Jaworski at NFL Films. I'll open the NFL Draft Playbook to show you how today's top picks will fit in with their new NFL teams.
From Times Square in New York to the Red Square, we'll be with you from Square 1 to Square 222 for the 15th straight year of the NFL Draft here on ESPN. Hello once again, everybody. I'm Chris Berman, and as somebody once sang, welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends. It's the 59th annual selection meeting, as they call it in the NFL, and as the rules change and the brave new world of the salary cap and teams and free agency, perhaps more than ever before, a premium on the 7 rounds of the NFL Draft to get a player that can come in and play with your ball club right away. We've moved the draft a little bit later, but that's only heightened the excitement as the phones and the teams have been buzzing all morning and now all afternoon long. And, of course, we've been buzzing just as well, and we'll do that, and we're glad you could pull up a chair and be with us for a while, as Joe Theismann and Mel Kiper have done for the umpteenth year, and we think we know who the first pick is. Young man named Dan Wilkinson, defensive tackle extraordinaire from Ohio State. Much bandied about that would the Bengals not be able to pay him? Would they not stay with him? But one thing is for sure, Mel, he's about as high a rated defensive lineman as you've seen. Is that correct?
I really think, Chris, he's one of the top 3 defensive linemen in the last decade, up there with Reggie White and Cortez Kennedy. You see the list of my ratings, 4 being the lowest, 10 being the highest. Bruce Smith, Steve Emtman, 9 9s. There's Big Daddy in there with Childress and Casillas. A big 6'4" 1/4", 313-pounder, ran that 4.72 during an individual workout. 32 reps at 225, awesome weight room strength, a guy that can wreak havoc in the middle of the line, and that's what's in vogue now in the NFL, those dominant interior defensive tackles.
With Wilkinson so coveted, there are lots of people, Joe, that would offer lots of things, I mean players, I mean picks, for this #1 pick. But Dan Wilkinson, Ohio State, Dayton, Ohio, Paul Brown God rest his soul, I think would roll over in his grave if the Bengals didn't keep the pick. They're doing the right thing by going with him, aren't they?
They really are, Chris. I mean, just the proximity of where Ohio State is located to Cleveland, or to Cincinnati, excuse me, that's what really sets it. But David Klingler really was the key to this. He played very well at the end of last season. Bruce Coslet's evaluation of him is we don't need a quarterback. Therefore, we can go out and get somebody on defense to help us stop people from scoring, and we can win some more ball games.
Well, the referee has handed the ball to the commissioner. He has put it on the tee, admittedly back to the 30-yard line at this point. But to kick off the draft proceedings, let's go up to the podium and Commissioner Paul Tagliabue.
The 59th Annual National Football League Draft. The Cincinnati Bengals have the first selection, and they are now on the board.
Want me to handle it? Chris can come in.
Well, let's see here. I have 3 Dan Wilkinson cards right here. One is Cincinnati, one is New England, one is Arizona. Do we need to shuffle the deck? Now, in case you're new to the NFL draft proceedings, 15 minutes for every first-round pick is allotted. Somehow, I don't think the Bengals will use all 15 minutes. Matter of fact, the card is up to the commissioner. Let's check it out.
The Bengals have selected Dan Wilkinson, defensive tackle, Ohio State University.
Well, not a lot of suspense there as Dan Wilkinson, the top pick in this draft, going to the Cincinnati Bengals. However, the question is, does Wilkinson have some sword blades as far as his salary demands are concerned? For more on that, let's check in with Indianapolis and join our Chris Mortensen. And Mort, Lee Steinberg and the Bengals have had dialogue going on and off. There have been various reports, it's stalled, etc. How tough will this be to get done?
Well, it's going to be very tough, I think, Chris, because really, Lee Steinberg's history with the Cincinnati Bengals has not been a successful one from this standpoint of getting guys signed early. In 1984, Lee represented Steve Young. Cincinnati traded that pick. He had Jason Buck a few years ago. That was his first training camp holdout. Lee represented David Klingler. Klingler didn't report until August. And so I think that the Bengals are going to hold the line. Mike Brown is not going to be as creative as the New England Patriots were a year ago in terms of coming up with a voidable option or some creative money. I think that Dan Wilkinson, we're probably looking at a lengthy holdout already. It's April, and we're looking at a holdout probably till August or September.
Well, Mort, on that contract note, the rules have changed with A, a salary cap, and B, a rookie salary pool. Steve Entman, who went #1 at defensive lineman 2 years ago to the Colts, 4-year contract, $9 million. Doesn't look like it's going to be able to happen again for that sort of money, at least for Wilkinson. But as far as that sort of player, I guess he's right there with Entman and maybe even more.
He's worth it, Chris. I think he's a tremendous football player, a great one-on-one talent, a guy that can just destroy an offensive line. And you'll watch Big Daddy this year, only his 3rd year in the program. Started out, of course, as a redshirt freshman offensive tackle. You see the way he closes for a 313-pounder. Remarkable speed, 4.73 during that workout. People say he didn't have that many sacks this year. Well, when you're double, triple teamed and you're held every way imaginable, it's tough. And even then, he's able to break loose and close in. And here's a guy that's going to open up a lot of sack opportunities for the likes of John Copeland in Cincinnati with the Bengals and refortify a defense that has been a sieve in recent years.
You know, Mel, you also mentioned the fact that he's going to open up the opportunity for other sacks. I think one of the things that was so obvious in the Cincinnati Bengals is they just didn't have any production in their front line. Take a look at the depth chart and the sacks that were produced. John Copeland, 3. Crumry, 3. And you know Crumry's got to be right at the end. Fryer, 1. Hinkle, 1. You got 8 sacks out of a defensive front. There's absolutely no way they could not afford to take Wilkinson. He's just too valuable to what they need and addressing the need of this football team.
No question, Joe. I think, you talk about trading the pick, and that was something that had been debated for weeks. If Seattle would have said, hey, Cortez Kennedy, 27 other teams, he's out there for a trade, what kind of offers would they have gotten in return? You needed a combination of 5 picks and players to make a deal. No way New England or somebody else was going to make that kind of offer. So Cincinnati has no recourse. They earned the right to draft the best player. Why do the rest of the league a favor and trade the pick? I think they did the right thing. Big Daddy will turn around that defense.
Wilkinson now becomes the 10th defensive lineman drafted since the merger in 1967. There have been 10 defensive linemen drafted with the #1 overall pick. And you see the other ones, some with moderate success. Bubba Smith, of course, had a nice career. Walt Patulski didn't quite work out. The 2s in Houston, Too Tall Jones in Dallas in '74. Leroy Selman, the first pick of the '76 draft, first pick ever by the Buccaneers, who's a great player. Kenneth Sims was not with New England. Bruce Smith, nothing more need be said with Buffalo. Russell Maryland made the Pro Bowl last year from Dallas. Steve Hetman, boy, we hope his two knees straighten out because he looked like a marvelous player for the Indianapolis Colts. And now Dan Wilkinson with the Cincinnati Bengals. So 10 defensive linemen with the number one pick. The next most is the quarterback. That is 8. Well, we've looked at film, and then we've looked at film, and then we've looked at film. But what better place to look at film than at NFL films? Let's check in with our Ron Jaworski, who has more and maybe an interesting look at Mr. Wilkinson. He's, as they say, Rod, the real thing, eh?
He is the real thing, and we do have a lot of film, as you can see, and I've looked at a lot of film. Wilkinson was a pick that had to be made. Larry Piccatello is coming to the Bengals from Washington, where they play the 4-3 defense. The defensive tackle is key to that defense. Let's take a look at Big Daddy in action. Here you'll see him, number 72, follow the arrow. He is quick off the ball, the rare combination of strength and quickness. Once he sees the gap, he has a nose for the football, a nose for the quarterback. But number one, he's going to have to stop the run with the Bengals. His only problem might be controlling his weight. Now we'll take a look at him, what he'll have to do when he takes over this tackle position, which is, we're looking at the Redskins now, where Piccatello coordinated that defense. You'll see he's on an island. He's got to get penetration. When you play this defense, coordinated by Piccatello, you've got to beat your man. If not, you see the result. The quarterback has time to throw the football. You cannot give a quarterback time. But number one, playing against Piccatello, coming through the Pettibone system, I think the number one thing that he's got to do is stop the run and force the offense into the known passing situation. I think it's a terrific pick.
We'll debate this. What? Hey, Mel.
All right, Ron, thank you. So Dan Wilkinson goes to the Cincinnati Bengals. When, and he will report when he will sign, is another question. The Indianapolis Colts are now on the clock. Now, they have 2 very high first-round picks. The number 2 pick right now, and the number 7 pick overall. Marshall Faulk, who is here in New York and maybe getting a phone call from the Colts right now, he's been the expected pick. However, Heath Schuler, Trent Dilfer, quarterbacks, and remember the Colts traded Jeff George. They have Harbaugh now, but the question is, do they need a quarterback now, a youngster, or do they go with a running back that looks so good like Marshall Faulk? And, of course, they haven't had a running game since Allen Amici, Joe.
You absolutely named it. I think that's the thing you really have to take into consideration. If you bring a young quarterback in, is he going to have any kind of support? I don't think so. I think that they have to go, and they must go, to a running back. I think Ted Marchibroda needs to do it. That's what Bill Tobin wants to do. Take a look at 90, 91, 92, 93. Look at the yards per rush, and then look at the rankings. Disappointing in 93 when they drafted Potts last year. They expected more production. They didn't get it. Now I think the most important thing they can do is get themselves a football player who really doesn't need a lot of blocking. They invested the money in offensive linemen last year, a lot of trades, a lot of moves. Now all of a sudden they've got the running back who can create space and take a lot of pressure off of Jim Harbaugh. Remember, Harbaugh was Tobin's #1 pick when he was in Chicago. I still think he wants to justify a little bit the fact that this kid can be his quarterback.
The card, Joe, has gone up to the commissioner, and we shall see if that's exactly what the phone call was for Marshall Faulk. I got to think so.
With the second pick in the first round, the Indianapolis Colts select Marshall Faulk, running back, San Diego State. The Washington Redskins are now on the clock.
Well, Marshall Faulk, Mel, I mean, no doubt we've known about this young man from a couple of years ago. A lot of people thought he could come out even last year. Stayed in school and explosion. Explosion is what the Colts need.
He's a great back, but Joe and I have been debating this for days, and I strongly disagree with this pick. And it's not any criticism at all of Marshall Faulk. The Colts have to come out of this draft with a quarterback, and if they don't, they're ripe for some criticism. Marshall Faulk, in his own right, is a great football player, a guy who can create his own opportunities running with the football. You see the electrifying ability he brings to an offense. Here he's out-racing a defensive back to the end zone. No question, his estimated speed throughout his career was 4.42, 4.45. He goes out 2 weeks before the draft and clocks a 4.33. That iced him as a possible #2 pick in the draft. My point, though, and I know we can get into this a little bit, Joe, is that when you have an opportunity to get a franchise quarterback, you better take it, because running backs, a Ricky Waters was a second-round pick, a Rodney Hampton was a